What's up, everybody? Changing my camera over here. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Miggy Writes Metal for part 2. I figured what I'm going to do with these is that I'm going to turn these into like a series. So part 1 was editing vocals. This is going to be part 2, mixing drums, and I'm going to keep moving forward. So we're going to do guitars, and then we're going to do like some production stuff, and then until we get to the end. So welcome back to Miggy Writes Metal. Today we're going to be focusing on drums. And as let me go over here. I don't know why my camera looks kind of like that. It looks a little funky, doesn't it? Let me see if I could fix that real quick. I messed around with the lighting a little bit, and it's kind of not working in my favor over here. I don't know why it looks so red. There's no red lights around me. Let me see. The things that you guys have to bear with. There we go. Let's make it a little bit darker. That should be right. I don't know why it does that. Like sometimes it kind of like freaks out or whatever. I don't know. I know I keep constantly messing around with the lights in here, but whatever. It is what it is. It just as we keep going, it just keeps getting darker and darker, which is fine because I like it to be a darker vibe in here when I'm mixing anyway. So this will help. So let's hit save. Either way, you guys are here to learn some stuff, not necessarily stare at my face. So it is what it is. So let me get this chat over here. If you notice, I did move the camera a little bit lower. I put it like here. It used to be like over here before, but now it's down here because when I look at the chat, it's like I'm looking at the chat and I don't look at my cell phone. So that helps. But anyway, so let's get to it. So I jumped over here, and what I did was... actually, I gotta get rid of this track over here, too. This is... there's nothing running to it, but let me get rid of it just for the sake of saking over here. Put that on full screen. Let me see. So, track 7, I can get rid of that. So, let's delete that track as if there's nothing on it. So, I'm starting with pretty much bare drums. So, this is what this sounds. So pretty much bare. And to be honest with you, they don't sound bad. You can get away with a drum mix like that. And I'll show you guys in the back end what I'm using for the drums. But in the meantime, let's move into doing some stuff here. Let's get rid of this UI over here. I'm pretty much going to be focusing on only the drums, so I don't really need the tracks. We're going to be focusing pretty much on the mixer today. So that's all you guys will be able to see. So let me turn off my Instagram. Goodbye, Instagram. And today's going to be kind of like a tutorial, so I'm going to be cutting some of this short, you know? By what I mean is that I'm going to be clipping parts of this so I can make the full video. So let's go to, let me change my buffer size real quick. Just so I don't really hear like a delay in my voice because I hear it and it's really annoying. So I'll give this a sec to do its thing. Let's go to 512. Alrighty, here we go. Bum, 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 bum. All right, so let me bust out the Logic Cam over here, which is necessary. All right, my people, there you go. So we're gonna be mainly working on the mixer today. Oh, look, I hear myself. By the way, I love how this SM57 sounds compared to my SM7B. So at least for doing talking head stuff, it's really, really, really good. So anyway, before I start geeking out on microphones. So, okay, the first thing we're going to do is that we have to set up our MIDI drums, right? We've written out our MIDI drums. We've written out our MIDI drums. They're up here, the GGD library. I have the track muted at the moment because something weird happens when you play that you get like a stereo sound coming out of the actual instance itself. But so you guys can see, make your life easier, what I'm doing. So you guys can see what I'm doing to make your lives easier is I have GGD over here. This is actually a mix. It's not just GGD, but for the sake of drumming, put your drum MIDI over here. We're going to do a multi-out, which will be this button down here. And then from there, we can actually split out our kick, snares, all the toms, room, and overheads. Now, I have it split up as a GGD kit because it's my main kit, but I'm not just using Get Good Drums. I was opening that up so you guys can see what I'm actually using. So when we open it up, you're going to see that I have my main kit is Architects. I love this kit. It sounds great. I love the snare. I love the toms. I love the overheads. The room sounds great, but you don't have much control with this kit when it comes to like certain details, like on the kick drum and stuff. So I've actually loaded an instance of RS drums, which is this kit over here. And this library has a lot of stuff. Like you can do some crazy shit on this library. I right off the bat, I just know how the Architects kit sounds and what I like a drum set to sound like. And that kit already has it, so I don't have to really have to sit here and mess with RS drums too much. But this is pretty much just a kick drum. Everything else is muted. There's nothing else on it. And in case you're wondering, I'm using the 24x16. So, and the reason why we're using it is because of this. So I can go into here and I could change everything from the in, the port, out, sub. I could put it in a room, overhead, all that stuff. I'm not, like I said, I'm not using any of the rooms or any of the stuff. This stuff it should actually be muted. So let me mute this. That shouldn't even be in the overheads. I don't even think it was coming through. Yeah, no. So that's how I have it. So it's a blend of two different drum libraries. And okay, so from there, like I said, we split it off so we have everything individual. So right now the drums by themselves sound like, which is not bad. I mean, it's a decent sounding drum kit, you know, like if you wanted to put a rock track out and you didn't want to go like too crazy in the production, that would work. You know, just basic compression and a little bit of limiting and stuff and it'll work. But we want to go over the top because we're doing a modern metal track. So I'm going to show you guys how to achieve that sound. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to see is I use a lot of like virtual mix rack, slate audio stuff, but just replace that with whatever you have available. And you should be able to get around getting a decent drum sound. Not that plugins are everything, but certain plugins, especially like stuff in the Slate virtual mix rack, they do make a big difference because they have their own sound. So just be aware that it's not going to sound the same if you use different plugins. And I will be recording a challenge on mixing a whole song using only Logic plugins, which stay tuned for that. That'll be interesting because I used to mix with stock Logic plugins for a long time until I got everything else that I got now. So I'll show you guys how to do that. I'm going to torture myself a little bit. Sorry, I'm late, Princess. You're good, Maddie. So here we go. So we're starting off with the drums. So in case you guys are wondering where I have these routed, I have all of these kick, snare, and all the toms. They're routed to a bus over here that just says drums. So this is every single drum. Actually, I can get rid of this one. There we go. So this is just drums, and then I have the overheads and the room routed to their own, which actually I have this stuff here I got to get rid of. You see, I almost cheated. I want to start from 0. So, and I have the room and the overhead routed separately to their own bus. Where are they? They're somewhere here. They're over here on their own bus, and then from there, they're routed into the drum bus. So pretty much one chain to another, right? So what we're going to start with the overall, because I like to approach things at like a top-down kind of way of mixing stuff. So we're going to stop from the drum bus itself, and then we're going to work our way down to the individual instruments so we can enhance them a little bit better. I got 2 people in here. It's a little sad. But anyway, so we're going to pull out our... Where is it? We're going to use our Slate Digital Mix Rack. Slate Virtual Mix Rack. All right, and this is the Slate. This is how it loads up automatically. Now, I do have a bus over here that has its own, already has like a drum bus on it, but I'm not going to use this. I'm going to start from the top so you guys can see what's actually going on, because if I just start from a template, it's going to be kind of confusing. So let's default this back. Let's actually get rid of this. So first off the rip, we're going to start with compression. Now my preferred method of compression for a drum normally is using something like a distressor on the individual drums themselves, but I think for this, we're going to be using the FG, which is the drum that you guys saw before on the load-in. We're going to add an EQ to it. We're going to be using the famous... Where's the pug? Where's my pug? Huh. Huh. It's not a pug, it's a Neve, but whatever, close enough. And then we're going to be adding a little bit of saturation to it, and for that we use the Revival, which is this one over here. And you could use any variation of these plugins. Any compressor that's red. In Logic, there is a stock one that's just a red compressor. It would be the same thing as this, which I think it's like based off of like a Focusrite compressor. I'm not too sure about that, but that's what I think it's based on. What am I looking for? I'm looking for harmonics. All right, there you go. Here we go, the Revival. So these are the 3 standard plugins, and in every instrument that I mix, you're going to be seeing the same things being used over and over again, because I literally start with compression, EQ, saturation. Now, there's different extremes of it, obviously, but this is pretty much the basic starting point. So I'm going to start with taking off these 2 plugins, and we're just going to work on the compressor right now. Trying the different circuits to see how it sounds. It's a little bit of saturation, so it's not too crazy. Let me raise the volume in my headphones. It's a bit too much compression. I'm just trying to hit like 1. There we go. I just want a little bit of pumping to kind of keep it together as I keep mixing it. Well, when it comes to the EQ, let's turn that on. All we're going to really boost is it's already there, preset 3.2. I'm just going to raise this a little bit just to give the snare a little bit more snap and the kick drum a bit more like snappiness. So we're going to go on there. You don't want to push it too far. It just sounds weird. But... there. There it sounds a little dull. That brings it some life. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some saturation. Now, the cool thing about this one is that this one does 2 separate like parameters of saturation. So it does the shimmer, which is like the top end, and it does the thickness, which is the low end. So you could kind of separate those. I normally add just a little bit. I go more extreme when it comes to like actually on the individual instruments, but we're just gonna like raise it until it kind of makes sense in our ears to smooth out that top end a little bit. Shit, I gotta lower the gain over here. Let's see some. I kind of like it there. That's for the snare drum. Now you can see I'm kind of pinning it really hard. I don't necessarily care about pinning things to the point where it's like, it sounds like it's almost too much. That's kind of like where I find my sound, and we're just going to keep hitting that harder. So realistically, that's fine for the way that it's at, and that's how that sounds like. So this is what it sounds like without the plugins. With the plugins. So it's starting to sound like a full drum kit, you know? MIDI drums are like, some people get like really overcomplicated with MIDI drums. They're not that complicated. They already sound good off the bat. You bought them for a reason. You don't have to do too much. It's not like sitting there and trying to like, you know, EQ and gate and compress a natural drum kit. That takes a lot more work. With MIDI drums, they're already recorded in the right atmosphere. They have the right microphones in the right room, played the right way, so you don't got to worry about too much. So we're not trying to like completely change the sound of our drums. If you wanted that, then you're probably just using the wrong library. What we're trying to do is just enhance what's already there. So it kind of makes more sense in the context of a modern mix. And there's gonna be little things that I'm gonna throw over here that you guys might have not seen before, because it's a lot of things that some guys kind of keep to themselves, but I don't care. I'm going to share it with you guys. So that's what we're here for. So let's go back into Logic. So we're going to learn how to mix today. Some drums. So first thing I always start with, I'm going to start with the kick. Kick drum already sounds pretty cool, but we're going to bring that up to 11, you know? So again, virtual mix rack. And we're going to have a little different process for this. So what we're going to use is, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Every time it loads in like that. I don't know why. But this is pretty much what we're going to be using for the kick drum. Just 2 plugins. And we have a few other ones that we're going to add a little bit later on. But this is what we're going to work with for right now. So the first thing we're going to start with is compression. I like to use a distressor for this. Just because it could really pump really hard, and I really like using the high pass, so it doesn't detect the low end, and it just kind of pumps the high end. It just kind of smooths everything out. It's really cool. But this is what we're going to use, distressor. It's aggressive, it's fast. You could kind of use an 1176 if you wanted to. A lot of DAWs don't come with like a distressor-based plugin, so you got to buy it. UA has a really good one, but to be honest with you, for the price of the membership, you might as well just go with the Slate one, because you have that and you have everything else to work with. So let's work with it. Let's see where we like this. I'm gonna set it to like a 4-1. It's already slamming. Also, if you go back and you watch my compression video, it'll actually show you how to use one of these compressors, because if you turn the input, there's no kick drum, but it's a volume-based threshold, so the more volume you put into it, the more it compresses. Pretty cool compressor. There's a few of them that are like that, but this just happens to be the best all around. I want to keep that blooming. Right there. Yeah, we're going like 9 dB, so we're slamming it pretty hard, but that's good. Let's mess around with these high pass filters. See? Now I feel like I could slam it harder. I like that. I like that there. So I like that there. Pretty much we're just trying to enhance the smack on it without messing around too much with the low end. This is just my preference on the way that I like to mix a kick drum, because I like the air that's underneath like the base of the kick drum, but I just don't necessarily want it like compressed all the time. That's pretty cool, but doesn't really work for some things. At least for me, it doesn't. So here we go. So now we're gonna work on the low end. We're gonna boost up a little bit of like the lows, like 90 around that area, just to give it more of a chest hit. So we're gonna pretty much be using this down here. Now, as I mix the song, if I think the kick drum has like too much snap, I personally don't really like really snappy kick drums. I will actually go into here and I will negate what we did on the master bus, which was that 3.2K. I'll bring that down to like kind of control the snap a little bit, but it's just drums by themselves right now. This is kind of what we have to work with, right? Make this a bell. Let's go to like 90 hertz. It helps if I turn it on. I like really boomy kick drum, so that's around smooth. That might even be a little too conservative for what I like, but for now, because it's just the kick drum, I think that sounds pretty good. Now we're going to move over to our saturation stage. So for saturation, I like to use. Where is it? There's two things you can use. You can use like the stressor, or you could use like the SSL. I like either or, but I like using this one. What's up, man? Oh, dude. What's up, Bray? So I'm going to use the saturator for this one because I think the saturator kind of works better. All right, so let me go to here. What you want, Bray?
Stop.
Okay, because I'm shooting a video. Anyway, so all right, so I'm gonna go to. Just gonna use a saturator, so I could hear it like already kind of like breaking up. I mean, we are kind of gaining volume by doing it, but it is sounding bigger as we go. And I like to put it on the second harmonics, not third, because the third sounds a little too... Yeah, second sounds a bit smooth. Yeah, let's go with second order harmonics. And now we're going to throw a limiter on there. So we're going to go with, let's go to SSL. Let's use X limit. Let's throw this fucker on here. All right, so there we go. So what we're going to do is that we're going to clip the top end, and this is like how you get your drums to be loud. So what we're going to do, why is this not thing? I don't know, why are you not working, Bray? Things when they don't work. So what we're going to do is that we're going to be pretty much just, there we go, now it works. We're going to be pretty much just shaving off the transient of the kick drum. So what that's going to allow us to do is that it's going to allow us more control without being too audible, unless you go like really extreme, and I'll show you an example of that. But really what it does is that it helps you like cut the transient off that our ears kind of don't really like pick up. So you could save yourself on volume, because even though we don't hear it, the compressor that's on the master will hear it. So this kind of like saves you a little bit more. It gives you more headroom, and it allows you to make the track louder because you're clipping a clipper that top portion of the transient of the instrument. So you can see like this is our peaks right here. You guys can see me very well. Yeah, you can. So you guys can see the peaks. These are the peaks of the kick drum. And what we're gonna do is that we're gonna just bring this down to the point where it's like we're just taking a little bit off the top. There you go. And all we managed to do was just like take that little piece of like the little shaving top end off, and that we already saved ourselves like almost half a dB of room or more. So that's how that works. And as you can tell, the transient, the little snap at the top of the kick drum kind of came down a little bit as we tucked it in, so it kind of smoothed it out. So this is really good. Now if you go extreme, that's when you start cutting into like the body of the drum. You don't want that. So that's it. And just like that, we have a kick drum mixed. There's a couple other things that we can do to it. If we wanted to route it out and sample it, we could do that. We could add a sample underneath it, which I do that sometimes. It depends on when I'm mixing the song. I'm not going to do that for this one because this song doesn't really have too much of like an electronic vibe. If it was like one of those songs that were like, you know, like really electronic based, then I would add it like an EDM kick underneath it to like really, really enhance it. But for this one, we're not going to do that. What we're actually going to do is we're going to throw in actually before our limiter, we should be throwing in our low control. And that's going to give us a little bit more low end with a little bit more control under the low end on the thing. What's up, gorgeous? What's up, man? So we're going to put a little bit of low control. Let me close this up. So we're just going to enhance a little bit of the low end. Normally anywhere from like 90 to 80. But let's see where it sounds best. Just a little bit. Sometimes going really low also helps too. Let me take the limiter off. I think for a rock track like this, 50 would work better. Not much stuff in the way of the low end. Yeah, we're gonna knock it on 90 there, and now we're gonna go back to our limiter. Drums. All right, so let me bring low control a little bit more down. Just a little bit. All I'm trying to do is like bring up like that low end that's like, if you guys don't have headphones, you guys won't be able to hear it, but like that low end that's like, that makes the speakers thump. That's all I'm trying to bring up, you know? It's just a little bit of that, just to give it a bit more fullness when the song goes on. We'll put our kipper back on there. There we go. That we got that going. So all right, now let's bust it out. Let's go to everybody's favorite drum. We're gonna go to the snare. I spend hours on snares, but I'm going to give you guys like the quick run through of how I mix them, because I will literally automate things as the song goes on, especially with the rooms. So we're going to throw on our virtual mix rack. Virtual mix rack, starting as the same template as the other one. We're just going to use that, use this one. I use a little bit of EQ on it. I have these stuff like templated out, so I sometimes don't remember what I do. So pretty much our our goal with the snare is to give it more crack on the top end, and then we're going to put a sample under it to kind of enhance the room a little bit. Right now, this is what our snare sounds like by itself. Let's say we don't have the rooms or the overhead. Yeah. But you can see like the rooms really gives it like that bigger than life snare sound. We're going to enhance that later on, but we're going to mess around with just the crack right now. I'm going to show you a cool way that I use distortion on the snare too. So let's go 4-to-1. It sounds so punchy. Chris Brown is shaking. That's right. Kind of like it there. I'm just trying to like get like right. I'm trying to just compress like right after the stick hit. And the release. It's really exaggerated. I kind of like it there. I like it when the snare has like that splack sound. Like it almost sounds like it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of like the older style like hardcore music had that like splacky snare that goes, you know. Hearing compression has to be one of the hardest parts. It kind of is. I mean, to be honest, it's one of the things that takes the longest to like really get right. Like a lot of people say, like, you know, a good engineer based on how his low end sounds. It's right because one, low end is already hard to hear because not every speaker can replicate it, and two, you got to learn how compression works on the low end and how frequencies react in the low end. So it's true. Compression does take a while to learn. Everybody could like pull up an EQ and start messing around with stuff. Even if you're not knowing what you're doing instinctively, you kind of know something. But compression is like you could have 10 different compressors and they all sound different, you know what I'm saying? But compression doesn't need to be about sound. Compression is just compression. It's just controlling a dynamic range of an instrument. So really you could use any compressor you want, but there are some compressors that are better suited for other things. Like the distressor, for example, is really fast reacting. So it's good for like transient things, even for like vocals, but you could also slow it down and you could use it for things like bass guitar, which I do that. Do that. All right, so now we're going to pop up a little bit of the, you know what, I'm not going to do this for it. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to compress into it, and that's good enough for this track here. What I am going to do, though, is I am going to bring, where is it? I am going to bring up one of these, not that one, actually. I'm going to use a distressor for decapitator. I confuse them both. But we're going to use a decapitator. Where's my sound toys? Here it is. Hold on, guys. Give me 1 sec. I gotta go to the little boys' room. Alrighty, I'm back. Guess what, everybody? I'm back. All right. Decapitator is legit. I love Decapitator, man. To be honest, like most of the time I use it as a preset, as you guys are going to hear it now. There's this one preset in it that does this really cool thing with snares, and I kind of discovered this by mistake. But so it's, if you go to like drums, you go to like snare accent. What it'll do, it'll actually like kind of mimic a drum room, but with distortion. So I'll just play it for you so you guys can hear. So this is without it. Snare drum. We're focused on the snare. This is with it. And that's really cool because Decapitator has this awesome thing that it's called tone. So you could make it like really dark, so it makes the snare kind of sound fatter and like it's already in a room without doing too much to it. And I love that. I love the sound of a really distorted snare, kind of like what Zach Cervini does for like Architects and stuff. I love the sound of that snare drum. So this is what we're gonna use. I'm gonna mess around a little bit with the drive because it's a little too much. But right now we're just gonna put it at 100 and we're gonna hear it out and see how it sounds. And we're gonna blend it. So try snare 50. I can push it a little more. Without it. I'll bring that back a little more. Kind of like right there. Without it. You hear like that, oh, behind the snare drum. That's the sound that I love. I love that sound. And with Decapitator, you could just do it with that one plugin. There's different ways you can do it. Like you could grab like a separate distortion and like put a high pass and low pass and like really, it takes like maybe 2 or 3 different plugins to do the same thing that Decapitator does with just one. So a lot of stuff is just like efficiency, you know. As you can see, I try to keep my plugin count as low as possible. So that's good. Now we're just gonna throw a limiter on there. It's pretty good. There you go. So now, so the way that I like to think about doing like drums is that the main instrument itself, so like the kick drum itself is the kick drum. That's never going to change. But things like the snares and the toms, the initial snare itself is like the clarity of the hit of the stick, which is where you get your snap. Everything else to me is the actual tone. So to me, like a lot of the snare tone lives in the rooms. So I kind of didn't go into this too much when I opened up GGD, but I'll show you guys. As you can tell from here, if you go to the balance over here, I got a little bit of it in the kick in the room, not too much. That probably happened by mistake, as I normally don't have any room in the kick drum. I'll roll with it for now. The snare drum is obviously, room, close mic. Tom, not in the room. All the toms are not in the room. There's nothing. It's just the room is literally just snare and this little bit of kick drum that I kind of messed up on. I'm just gonna turn it off, and that's it. That's all there is. There's nothing more. It's just a snare drum. So that's the way I try to keep everything like kind of clear, because the toms, a lot of people get into like complicated mixing about toms. Toms aren't that complicated to mix. To be honest with you, most of the time I don't do anything with toms. I just leave them in the mix, and they're the last things that I touch, and I just duck them where they belong, and that's it. At worst case scenario, I'll put them all into like one bus, and I might put like a compressor on it just to limit it, but that's like very rare. I almost never touch toms. So we have all right, so now we're gonna go into mixing the overhead, because like I said, the room is just a snare room. There's nothing else on there, so I'm not gonna worry about that too much. Overheads are extremely easy. So we're going to go to a little bit of decapitator. So what we're going to do with these is that, one, we don't want to oversaturate it, because if we do oversaturate it, I need coffee. But if we do oversaturate it, they're going to sound, you can't distinctly tell what cymbal is what, so we don't want to oversaturate it. But we also don't want to just leave it the way it is, because some things will kind of poke, so we kind of smooth that top end out. And this is how we kind of do that. So I add a little bit of decapitator. Gives it like more sustain, you know. So the ones that work. Kind of that out already. And like be aware, like this does add volume. And then the next thing I do, I just put a limiter on it. That's it. Now with the rooms, with the overheads, I do get a little bit harder on it. So I do want to see a bit more red in it, just because I want it to be kind of like just a line. But I don't want to go too far, because then it just sounds like it'll snap this. It'll make it like sound weird. So it's just a little bit to like, so to the point where you still hear like the cymbal separation, but enough where it's like controlled. You get me? Good. All right. So now that we got those out of the way, do you guys have any questions for me while I'm doing this? Ask me stuff. I'm going to actually put this in, I said in the beginning of the video, but I'll say again because you guys weren't here early in the beginning, but I'm going to be putting this in a playlist of like a mixing playlist, so you guys can go back to it. I'm going to try to see if I can condense this down to a shorter video, but I'm so scatterbrained that I don't know how that's going to work. But I'm going to try to condense it down into like one video that I can make that's like, 10, 15 minutes. So when you guys go into it, you guys could see like, okay, this is, snare, kick, whatever, or like vocal editing. And then the next one we're going to do is like guitars and bass, stuff like that. So you guys have like it'll probably be like a series of like 4, maybe 5 videos, and I'll throw the EQ ones and understanding compression in there. So now that we got that out of the way, now we're going to work with the room. So the room itself, this is what it sounds like. And it's weird because like GGD has this thing where there's like a ride cymbal in the room. It's really weird. But You hear that like that ride cymbal that's in the room? Whatever, it works. I just say, yeah, listen, Nolly, I don't know how you did this. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but it works. You just hear like it's like a gong, gong. But it kind of makes the snare room sound longer. So I don't know. Maybe it was done on purpose. I'm not sure. But very simplistically, Jesus Christ. We're going to throw a virtual mix rack on there. And then we're going to start with our same template, how we always do it. I don't really mess around with like EQ. I just kind of compress. So we're just going to compress the drum room. Let's throw a 4-to-1. I want to compress this hard. You're starting to hear that cymbal in the background, huh? And let's bring down the volume on it. And that's it. And that's the snare room is one of those things, like when I get into like the full mix of like doing the final touches, you guys will see this. The drum room is something, the snare room, I'm just going to call it the snare room because it's not even a drum room, it's just a snare room. The snare room is something that I actually automate throughout the whole track. So like this will be like my main snare sound. You know, let's say for example there's a dropout verse where there's like no instruments, it's just kick and snare. You don't want the snare sometimes to be like ringing for, you know, seconds at a time. So I leave this room from GGD as like my main room that plays throughout the whole track, but there's going to be another room we're going to add to right now that's going to be like an exaggerated version of that snare. And what it's going to do is like it's really going to throw the snare off left and right. So when the chorus hits, there's a breakdown, certain parts that kind of need some impact. We're going to automate that snare room to come in so those parts sound bigger. So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to go to the snare. We're going to add a bus, and this is all in Logic. You know, I don't know any, you know, you can do the same thing on Cubase and everything, but just add a bus. So we're going to add a bus. We're going to go to 4 just because it's empty. Let's raise that output, and then we're going to go to bus 4 over here. Is this bus over here? We're going to name this snare sample, and our snare sample is pretty much going to be a 1-to-1 right now. So it's just the same snare, but we're going to add slate trigger. Now if you don't have slate trigger, you could do this manually, I guess, or the other cool way you can do it is though with that distortion trick that I did on the snare with the decapitator, you can do that on a drum room and you'll have like that elongated, huge sounding drum room. Or you could use some reverb. A lot of guys just use reverb because it already throws it. But I like using more of like something that sounds like a snare than a reverb. So we're going to go here. We're going to add, where's slate trigger 2? Here we go. So this is a slate trigger. You guys have probably seen this plugin before if you've done any amount of mixing, but essentially all this does is that you run a snare or you run a kick drum or a tom or whatever kind of hit you want through it, and it'll replace that hit with whatever you want it to be. So essentially what we're doing is that we're actually triggering samples. So it doesn't matter you could put like a cowbell. It doesn't matter. You can make a kick drum sound like a cowbell, but I do have a drum room that I like. I have a few that I like. I'm going to go. I think I'm going to try that one. Let's try that. I'm gonna try a different one. Not feeling that one today. So you kind of hear like that double hit on the snare. So I'm going to roll back this over here, which is the attack. And it's going to draw the sample back to before the stick hits. So you're going to hear a double transient. By itself. Let me see. I kind of really want to use this one for some reason. That's kind of it right there. And that's, like I said, that's like blended in. So when like choruses come in, I'm a slave to the snare. So I like huge sounding snare sounds. So I use a lot of like little drum rooms and stuff. But that's pretty much it. How to mix a MIDI drum kit. Like I showed you guys, it doesn't really take very much. Just to recap. So on the drum bus itself, we got compression, a little bit of EQ boost at like 3.2K, a little bit of saturation. You could use any compressor, any EQ, any saturation plugin that you guys have for that on the bus. And then we kind of rinse and repeat just with like different plugins on the bus itself. So kick drum, decapitator. So it's like a kind of a slower attack on this with a quicker release. Get that pumping sound out of it. A little bit of EQ to boost the 90 hertz. We have our saturation, giving us a bit more body on that kick drum, a bit more power out of it. Low control just to boost up the little 50 hertz. Like I said, none of this stuff is kind of set in stone. This is just kind of like what I use. These are the plugins that I like to use. So when I start mixing the track, I might go back and like change these. And I normally do that like when I start sitting down with like the final mix of the song where I have everything kind of where I want it to. Then I go back and I tighten everything up. So this is what we're doing. Low control, you could just literally use an EQ and like boost 50 dB on like any kind of like clean parametric EQ. But this adds like a little bit of like distortion to it. So just boost up 50 hertz on any kind of EQ and you should be fine. And clean up those transients up top. Same thing for the snare. We got just decapitator on that one. The distressor on that one. Sorry, that was distressor. This is decapitator with the snare accent preset, and then I just rolled it back, wet knob, rolled back the distortion a little bit, and set it on dark mode just because I like that. I like that crack on the low end. And then we have a limiter. Do limiter things. And the snare is routed out to a separate bus that has a trigger. That is essentially just a room. That's all this is doing, just a room. Room itself, this is a room. My snare doesn't have a room, so this is just, there's just snare in this room. All we're using is virtual mix rack with some decapitator. And then we have our overheads with decapitator. That was distressor. Why do I keep calling it decapitator? This is so interesting. I'm not even doom scrolling while listening. Bruh. Number one, my boy. So, and then decapitator on the overheads just to smooth out the cymbals a little bit. And then we have a little bit of limiting with a limiter. Actually, considering that is a lot of limiting, but that's kind of like where I like it, so it's controlled, you know? And then in the context of the and that's what we got so far. So I think that was a good educational video on how to mix MIDI drums. And it only took me like an hour. But that's it for today, guys. I'm gonna be back probably maybe Friday. I have a wedding this weekend. I dread weddings. I don't like weddings, but I go to it because friends. I'll see. I'll make a post on YouTube and you guys will see it. So with that said, guys, I hope you learned something today. Oh wait, hold on, wrong page. Hey, wait, no. Oh, that was the wrong one. I did a stupid. With that said, I hope you guys learned something today. Mixing drums. I'm going to be condensing this down to make like a quick video out of it. Like I want to condense down to like 10, maybe 15 minutes. And then, yeah. And then, you know, you guys have something to watch and I'm going to put it on a playlist. So it has individual instruments so you guys can reference that back whenever you guys need to mix your stuff. But with that said, I am done for today. And Miggy out.